All right, so a little log home update. If I haven't actually shown you what it looks like out here, this is actually a log home. But yeah, it is a little bit less efficient, I believe, than your traditional stick-built home, even though they're logs and they provide a level of insulation because they're relatively thick. These aren't full logs. These are called D logs, I believe, because they're in the shape of a D. But if you would kind of compare this to a real full log, you would see that this is probably like a third of an actual log, because I probably think you could get the front, the back, and then there's just a small part on top and bottom that they cut out for this tongue and groove type of setup here, where everything kind of plugs into each other. Some of the issues you get with a house like this, you get a lot of spiders, lots and lots of spiders, and even if you spray, probably 3 days later they're all back. You get spider nests everywhere, so you're constantly being vigilant for spiders, and they get inside, so you have to be aware of that. Dirt daubers, get tons and tons of dirt daubers out here. You also can get mice and other rodents, so you gotta be really careful. Now, the ceiling, or at least the roof on this home, is actually made out of it's a Spanish tile, and it's concrete. So those tiles are stupid heavy. I mean, this has to be an insanely heavy roof that's on this home. And we're actually considering, whenever we modify this or expand it or whatever we plan on doing, to replace those with, I think they're called steel core, which look the same, but they're made out of steel and they're much lighter, and they also have a lifetime warranty, as do these. But we may just try to recycle these because they're up there. The challenge is that they're, again, very, very, very heavy, which is probably a benefit if you're going through like a hurricane, because it's unlikely that wind would be able to really rip the roof off. But the downside is it puts a tremendous amount of weight on the structure. So you really have to have a strong structure to be able to support a roof like that, if it's real concrete, Spanish tile. If it's the fake aluminum stuff or steel stuff, not so much, because they'd be a lot lighter. All the logs were sealed. In between, you can probably see the clear sealant that was put here. This has been on the house for a long time. So even 2 owners back, which we've actually got to know, they didn't put this on. So this has been here for a long time, and they must have used some really high quality stuff. Probably that 100% silicone stuff, because it's held up really well. There's a few small areas, like right here, where it looks like it might be coming back a little bit. But yeah, that stuff's held up really well. And the manufacturers of the logs have actually told us you don't need to put that on there, that just the weight of the logs compressing against each other will be enough to create a seal. Don't know if I fully agree with that or not, but what do I know? They're the ones who make it. Now, again, from an efficiency perspective, the inside of this cabin is not as efficient as I would have thought. Now, it has, residential batted insulation in the top. It has 2 AC units. It has a 1.5 ton unit on this side and a 3-ton unit on the other side. But we do have challenges cooling this house when it's really, really, really hot outside. I don't know how effective it would be heating the home in the winter. It did get cold out here, and we used the gas fireplace. But I can honestly say that from a cooling perspective, it's difficult. So we added a window unit, and you can see it, back behind this box. I built this box around it because I don't like the way a window unit looks. And this has actually worked really well. So it vents well, a lot of air still flows through it. It's an LG dual inverter unit. It's a 10K unit, which I've learned a lot about window units. I've never really used window units before, except for like a small shop I had in the past. And I've learned that if you go with this type of window unit, it's actually far more efficient than going with something like a portable unit, the ones that roll around and you have to put hoses. So when you get one of those, like a 12 or 14K BTU unit is actually only about as efficient as like an 8 or 10K window unit or traditional unit. So a window unit is actually a pretty efficient unit, and we were able to go down in size getting this. And I will tell you that the room is huge. It's like a 14 by 20 foot room, and that thing will freeze you out. I mean, we can drop it down to like the 50s. It is so cool how cool that air conditioner can get that room, and it's just really amazing. So yeah, we've really enjoyed that air conditioner, and it's not very loud. That dual inverter technology is pretty quiet. We picked it up at Home Depot. I think it cost us like $450, something like that, under $500, and it was as expensive as the actual portable unit that we had tried before that, which cost the same amount and was a 14K BTU unit from Toshiba. So this LG dual inverter unit has been working really well, and you can see all the water dripping down off the bottom. That's a really, really effective dehumidifier for the room as well, because the process of air conditioning is also dehumidifying, and if you don't get the right type of unit, you might actually be blowing a lot of that water back into the actual air in the room as vapor, and you don't want to do that. So this does a really effective job of draining it out. Those portable units will typically have either a constant drain hose, a tank, or they'll just blow the water out with the air that leaves the room, and it, again, doesn't do a really effective job in my opinion. Plus they're bulky, they take up a lot of room on the floor. This has worked well. I used a bunch of old lumber that I had to build this, so this was all made out of scrap wood, and it works really well. We've been really happy with it. So yeah, some interesting projects taking place out here. Cooling that room has been really, really great. We don't have to run the 1.5-ton unit hardly anymore. It really didn't work that effectively. Plus where they placed it was kind of in an enclosed hallway area, so we have to keep all the doors open for the correct amount of return air pressure to go back to the unit, and that was just a pain to deal with. So by putting a window unit in here, we're not working with a negative air situation where, you know, sometimes you put a portable unit in and it creates this negative air situation where it's actually pulling air out of the room and expelling it versus recirculating it and cooling it like this one does. So that's very cool, and we've been very happy with this LG unit. If you're interested in a good quality window unit, we've been running this one now for, I'm going to say, about a month, and we've had absolutely no problems with it. It's pretty quiet compared to the other ones we've seen. And yeah, you put a little box around the outside of it and you really can't tell that it's even there, except for the water dripping off the bottom. But yeah, I'll put a link in the description if that's something you may be interested in. Pick this one up from Home Depot. And then another angle out here. So this is the other half. This is the living room, and there's a dining room right here. We got it set up so you can sit down. If you never saw this little bench that I built, I can't remember if I ever made a video on it. But this thing's super old now. It's like 10 years old. But I made this little zero gravity bench about 10 years ago, probably about about 10 years ago. And it was actually at the other house, and we brought it out here, and I repainted it, replaced some of the lumber that was starting to go bad. I still have to do some refinishing work on it, but it turned out really nice. And yeah, I came up with the design actually while I was in the back shed one day, and I was just had a bunch of wood, and I was like, you know what, let me see what I can build. And I got about 60% done with the lumber I had, made a quick trip to Lowe's, picked up some more, and this thing has held up really, really well. We've moved it everywhere, and it's been a great little bench. And those bugs are super loud. And if you're wondering what makes all that noise, it's these little guys right here. This is his shell when they shed their exoskeleton, or whatever you want to call this thing. Isn't that crazy? It's a big bug too. Get him in the light so you can see. Yep, that's what's making all the noise. Great target practice for pellet guns if you can actually find them. And then finally, you can see some of the hoses we have ran from where we hooked up the bib for the from the well, the shallow well, to irrigate everything. So we've been able to get water out here. The septic, it's not a drain field, it's a aerobic system which has sprinklers. It's kind of spread out from here, here, and here, and it does a good job of watering that area right there. It just misses all of this, and it misses all of this. And this is all the sod that we put down, and it's been growing really, really well, but we haven't had rain in a long time, and the rain we've gotten has only been really, really short-lived. Haven't had really much of a chance to get the water really saturated into the ground, but the grass is rooted. There were a lot of folks who said, you know, it was just going to die, it wouldn't work, there's too much shade out here, it was just going to essentially, you know, wilt up and die, and that's not the case. As long as we keep it watered, it's been doing well. And with the shallow well being able to feed water out here, we've been able to water it a lot. And this is the grass that was here, to kind of give you kind of a comparison. And this is the grass that we added. And sure, there are some brown spots and there's some spots where it needs additional water, but again, that's just because we're currently in a drought situation, so we haven't had a lot of rain coming down. We haven't been watering it probably as much as we should, but we have been keeping it relatively maintained out here because of that shallow well and the fact that I have a connection here for all of my hoses to get water out here if I want it. Very, very cool. Very cool. But yeah, one other thing I wanted to show you, and it's actually a really cool invention that we installed at the pool, and it was a gift from my father, so I really appreciate that. But yeah, it's a super, super cool invention if you have a swimming pool and you've never seen something like this. So let's move over there. So check this out. We are in the back pool deck. Everything's coming along real nicely. You know, I have had a bit of a challenge, and I'm not going to say a challenge. I kind of do this the same way I think most people do this, of keeping the water level maintained when it's as hot as it is out here. And, you know, the problem we run into is between, you know, the sun just causing evaporation over such a large surface, it also affecting the salt concentration, because this is a saltwater pool. You know, the salt portion of it, I'm gonna have to constantly monitor. You know, shocking the pool is probably needed at some point, especially when the sun is this bright out here all the time. You just have it hitting it all the time. The water's probably 85, 90 degrees. The challenge you run into, again, is your water level, and you don't want the water to get too low. Otherwise, your intake, or the part that actually pulls water out of the pool to filter it and before it comes back in, can run dry if you're not careful. So, you know, my dad actually bought me a present, which is really cool. I'd never even seen one before, even though I probably could have surmised that somebody would have invented it. And it helps maintain the water level in here. And if you have a pool and you don't know that this thing exists, this might be something worth getting. Okay, so first and foremost, this is not any type of a sponsored video. Again, my father has a pool, and he put one of these in his pool, and this is called a Pool Sentry, or the Pool Sentry. And you simply hook your hose to it, and it has a float inside of that portion right there where you set the correct height. And once the float floats, it shuts the water off. So again, it fills up when the water level drops, and it maintains that level. And as that float goes lower and lower with the water pressure dropping, it turns water on and starts filling your pool back up. Very economical way of doing it, so you're not finding yourself putting thousands of gallons back in the pool because it's dropped too low. This will just maintain the water level that you're trying to maintain, which again is really, really cool. I've had pools before, we've maintained pools before, but I've never seen one of these, and it's, you know, just pretty common sense that somebody would have gotten one of these by now. Now, the other cool thing about this is if you have a dog and you have like an outside pool or an outside watering area for them when they're outside, you could probably even attach this to, you know, like a dog pool or a watering area, which is really cool. Now, because this is an above ground pool, and because the deck sits above the edge, which you can see here, it did not work out of the box with this pool. So if I try to set this on the edge like it's designed for most in-ground pools, it would not actually fill, because the little part that goes down, the probe that goes in the water with the float, couldn't reach the water even at its lowest level. So I made this little thing out of scrap lumber that I had. Essentially, once we built the pool and the deck and the pathway going up to it, I had tons of extra lumber. Used some 2x6, attached a 2x6 to a 2x6, and then a 2x10 underneath, because the feet on this fit perfectly on each side of the 2x10 to keep it from sliding off. Then I had an extra piece of the Trex plank right here, which is that composite fiber plank that I put on the end. I Thompson water sealed the whole thing. It drops it down about 6 inches, so at almost its lowest setting, it's not quite there, which is good, so there's some margin. It allows me to use this, and it still pumps water into the pool. And you can probably see the water filling up right now, the bubbles. And this is how you adjust it right there. You simply twist that knob, and there's a screw that threads down, and it lets you raise or lower the float to the desired height. But with this, again, it allows me to kind of place it where I need it, and I can remove it if I need to. I have some structural screws holding it in place. Again, I Thompson water sealed the whole assembly. The water will never get up to the height of this little mount, which is still probably about 6 inches off the water level. And because this will shut off, you know, probably in another inch, it's going to have plenty of clearance right here. I have these steps right here that will be mounted, and it will kind of keep anybody from going back into this area so they're not bumping their head or interfering with it. But yeah, that's a really cool product. Again, if you have a pool, this is something you might be interested in. It's made from Rollichem. I'll put a link in the description of this video. I know we got it off Amazon, so I'll throw an Amazon link in if this is something you may be interested in. But very, very cool invention. And I think there's several different brands, but this is one I believe a pool company showed my father, so he ended up buying, and then he got one for me. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very soon.